In the headlines, South Korea's foreign minister stays pessimistic about the possibility of a Seoul-Tokyo summit, calling the prospects cloudy for now. Korea's September exports jump thanks to a pickup in demand in the United States and China despite the strong Korean won. And pro-democracy protesters throng the streets of Hong Kong, marking the start of National Day, which is believed to be a critical day for the Umbrella Revolution. Hello, welcome to Primetime News. I am Kang Cheri.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks so much for joining us. We start with the latest prospects of a meeting between President Park and Japan's Shinzo Abe. And though both have been in office for a while, they've yet to meet one-on-one.
And according to Seoul's top diplomat, the prospects for the South Korea-Japan summit remains cloudy, and the sun will shine again only if and when Tokyo acts with sincerity. Our Hwang Sung-hee tells us more.
The forecast for a summit between President Park Geun-hye and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe this year is cloudy. In an interview with Korean radio station CBS on Wednesday, Foreign Minister Yun Byung-se said a show of Japanese sincerity over historical issues remains a precondition to summit talks. He added that resolving the urgent issue of Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women would be a good place to start. Yun said measures that can be accepted by the 55 former sex slaves still alive and the international community would be regarded as measures of sincerity. His remarks follow a string of meetings between the two countries this month. Yun held private talks with Japanese ambassador to Korea, Goro Betcho, for the first time, while President Park welcomed former Japanese Prime Minister Yoshiro Mori, who brought a personal letter from Abe. The vice foreign ministers from Korea and Japan met in Tokyo Wednesday for their first strategic dialogue since President Park took office in February of 2013. The frequent diplomatic exchanges raised speculation that the two neighbors were preparing for what would be the first summit between their leaders, with November's APEC summit in Beijing as the likely stage. But President Park remains adamant she will not meet with Abe until he apologizes for Tokyo's wartime atrocities. As the two sides remain wide apart on the comfort women issue, the Korean foreign minister said it will likely be some time before the sun shines again. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
South Korea marked the Armed Forces Day today, and President Park Geun-hye said thank you to her country's soldiers, while also reminding them that it's the military's role to contribute to a peaceful unification of the two Koreas. Our Son Jung-in has more.
South Korea staged a massive ceremony on Wednesday to honor the military on its 66th Armed Forces Day. At the military headquarters in Daejeon, President Park Geun-hye started her speech by describing the current security situation on the Korean peninsula. She said the North had been raising tensions in the region while pursuing the development of its nuclear weapon and missile programs. She then urged Pyongyang to join Seoul's efforts to build trust and lay the groundwork for the potential unification of the divided Korean peninsula.
북한은 핵이 남북관계 발전에 가장 큰 걸림돌임을 직시하고 하루속히 핵을 포기하고 국제사회의 책임 있는 일원이 되어야 합니다.
President Park also said the North's human rights violations should be addressed, an issue she placed emphasis on recently at the UN General Assembly. She added that this must start with South Korea's military, which should lead as a role model of human rights. She also urged the military to look inward, referring to a series of deaths blamed on bullying, harassment, and assaults of junior enlisted soldiers by their seniors in barracks.
이제 우리 군은 과거의 잘못된 관행과 적폐를 바로잡아서 새로운 정의의 강군으로 거듭나야 합니다.
President Park stressed that love and trust of the people is important for making a strong military and promised to do her utmost to improve the welfare of soldiers and their service environment. 손정인, Arirang News.
Washington says it's considering the idea of installing a U.S.-designed missile defense system in South Korea, but that idea seems to conflict with what Seoul's military has been saying. Our Connie Kim reports.
Seoul and Washington are at odds over whether the two will station a U.S. anti-missile defense shield in South Korea to deter any possible nuclear attacks from North Korea. The latest from South Korea is that no consultations have taken place between Seoul and Washington over the deployment of a missile battery in the south. The statement from Seoul's defense ministry was in response to comments from U.S. Deputy Secretary of Defense Robert Work, who said at a recent forum that there had been discussions on setting up a terminal high-altitude area defense or THAAD system to deter North Korea's missile threats.
We are considering very carefully whether or not to put a THAAD in South Korea. We're doing site surveys. We're working with the government of South Korea now to determine if that is the right thing to do.
The THAAD missile defense system can strike down medium and intermediate-range ballistic missiles in mid-air. Deputy Secretary Work underscored that the system, while complicated to set up, would become an important part of regional defense. One THAAD battery was deployed to Guam last year. The senior U.S. official also noted that Washington is well aware of the possible backlash involved in deploying the system in South Korea.
We've emphasized to both China and to Russia that these are not strategic anti-ballistic missiles, that they essentially they're essentially designed to address regional threats.
Washington has been considering stationing the U.S. anti-missile defense shield since 2011. The idea of a deployment has some worried in Seoul that it could be an attempt from Washington to get other Asian allies to join its missile defense system. The two countries are expected to hold consultations over stationing the U.S.-designed defense system at the upcoming Security Consultative meeting in Washington this month. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Lawmakers in Korea are back in action after months of contentious gridlock over the special ferry bill. Today they continue to review bills, but as our Ji Myung-gil reports, we still have to wait and see whether the parties will truly be able to come to terms and pass legislation.
The National Assembly, after being gridlocked for months over a bill designed to investigate the causes of April's ferry disaster, is back in business. Their first act on Tuesday night after reaching an agreement on the special legislation was to pass 91 bills. Lawmakers from the rival parties returned on Wednesday morning to open sessions of parliamentary standing committees and began reviewing hundreds of pending bills. Over the next month, they will conduct parliamentary audits of government offices, pass series of anti-corruption bills, and finally push through the one piece of legislation that has kept the rival parties at odds since the spring, the Seoul ferry bill. Tuesday's agreement ends the standoff at Parliament, but not the controversy. The representatives for the families of Danon High School students killed in the April ferry tragedy have voiced their strong opposition to the deal reached by the ruling and opposition parties. It's essentially the same agreement made on August 19th, although the rival party floor leaders agreed to add another clause. That clause states that both rival parties will jointly recommend 4 independent counsel candidates to President Park Geun-hye, who will choose one of them to lead the fact-finding committee in charge of investigating the ferry disaster. The option of allowing the victims' families to participate in the process will be discussed later on. The victims' families have been firm in saying they want more power in the nominating process. While the National Assembly is back at work, the actions of the lawmakers over the coming weeks and their ability to move beyond their differences over recent months will determine whether parliamentary affairs truly are normalized. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
Your gateway to the day's biggest stories in Korea and around the world. Breaking news, the hottest interviews, and a whole lot more. Join Arirang's Sean Lim and Kang Chae-ri from the heart of Seoul.
Begins now.
Primetime news, weeknights, live at 10 on Arirang TV.
Korea's exports picked up in the month of September with increased shipments to the United States and China. The Korean government expects the trade volume to reach a record high by the end of this year. But as our Kim Ji-yeon points out, by next year, we could see those exports dwindle against an unfavorable currency environment.
Despite the appreciation of the Korean currency, the country's exports edged up in September and is expected to replace its yearly high by the end of this year. Outbound shipments rose about 7% on year to nearly $48 billion. Strong performance figures in steel and computers led the gains, rebounding from a contraction in August. Outbound shipments to the U.S. were up nearly 20%, buoyed by signs of recovery in American jobs and consumer spending in August. Exports to China also went up in 5 months on strong demand for solid-state computer memory, which are faster and more reliable than traditional hard drives. With this pace, the Trade Ministry says exports will exceed its record high by the end of this year, reaching $1.1 trillion on the back of increased shipments of semiconductors and automobiles. But an economist from Geun-hye Research Institute says it will be a different story next year as the weakening of the Japanese yen against the strengthening Korean won fully takes effect.
Normally, it takes up to a year and a half for the changes in the exchange rate to noticeably take effect on market prices. Due to the weakening of the yen, the payability of Japanese exporters are improving. So they're expected to lower their unit prices for products like automobiles and steel while steadily increasing their supply.
The appreciation of the Korean won against the Japanese yen first became evident in the second half of 2012, largely due to the expansionary monetary policy taken by Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. The current exchange rate of roughly 968 won to 100 yen is the lowest it's been since 2008. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
A new tech giant in Korea's internet service industry has officially been created. With today's launch of what will now be called the Daum Kakao will zero in on Naver, the #1 player in Korea. Our Hwang Sung-hee reports.
It's official. Daum Kakao, born through the merger of Korea's second-largest internet portal operator Daum and the country's biggest messaging application firm KakaoTalk, launched business on Wednesday. The new tech giant aims to become a mobile live platform leader based on Kakao's 37 million users and Daum's contents.
Our key business strategy is connecting people to people and information, online and offline businesses, and people and objects.
Daum and Kakao have been preparing to launch a united entity since May this year when they announced their merger. Kakao has been diversifying its business portfolio, introducing services like Bank Wallet Kakao, a mobile platform that provides small-sum financial transactions and mobile payments. Daum has been focusing on its role as a search engine, launching specialized services for better search results. The merger will create the biggest company on the country's tech-heavy KOSDAQ once it's listed in mid-October, with the entity's market cap expected to reach 10 trillion won, or roughly $9.5 billion. But analysts say the listing on the KOSDAQ marks only the beginning.
Right after Daum Kakao is listed on the country's secondary bourse, investors will ask the company to shift toward the main bourse. KOSDAQ is an entry market for newcomers, not for already huge companies like Daum Kakao.
The merger points to a shift in Korea's internet portal dynamics, currently led by the country's top portal operator Naver, which takes up 80% of the domestic market share. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
Roughly 500 million Chinese people are expected to travel in and out of China during the national holiday period of Golden Week, which started today. And the number of those traveling to Korea is on the rise and has been for a while. Our Kwon So-hwa tells us what Chinese tourists these days want and what will continue the boom.
A record-breaking 160,000 Chinese are expected to visit Korea during their National Day holiday this year from October 1st to the 7th, around 35% more compared to the same period last year. The surge is partly attributed to the Incheon Asian Games still underway, with nearly 900 Chinese athletes to cheer for, along with the various Korean culture events being held outside the stadiums. The Incheon China Culture and Tourism Festival opens this week under the theme of Korea-China Cultural Exchange, attempting to attract visitors with traditional performances and discounts for events, shops, and restaurants. Just in time with the holiday and the Incheon Asian Games, Incheon's Chinatown aims to shift the attention of Chinese tourists away from shopping malls toward other attractions. But for many Chinese visitors, the most popular activity while in Korea is still shopping. In fact, nearly 60% of their vacation expenditures went towards shopping last year.
I especially buy a lot of makeup. It's cheaper, and using it makes my skin look very natural.
Korea is meeting the demands of China when it comes to shopping, as Chinese tourists now shop much more in Korea than in Japan. But what's important is that other tourist attractions have to catch up. There needs to be more development in cultural experiences for tourists.
While for now, Korea's economy is highly benefiting from Chinese tourist spendings, experts say a halt in this boom is a concern, calling for long-term plans to promote revisits to the country by offering more than duty-free shopping sprees. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
A day ahead of the start of Asia's largest film event, the Busan International Film Festival, pre-celebrations have kicked off on this Wednesday night in the southern port city. Our cultural correspondent Park Ji-won files this report from Busan.
Preparations are ongoing at the Busan Cinema Center, the main venue of the annual film festival, to greet dozens of film stars and film lovers from all over the world. Now in its 19th installment, this year's Busan International Film Festival opens this Thursday evening. 314 films from nearly 80 countries will be shown at 7 theaters in this southern harbor city throughout the 10-day event. To celebrate this year's grand opening, an Eve celebration took place Wednesday at Biff Square in Nampodong, the birthplace of the festival back in 1996.
I sincerely congratulate the opening of the 19th BIFF. Please support our film, The Tenor Lyrico Spinto.
I came to celebrate the opening of the Busan International Film Festival. I'm very happy to be here.
As a Busan resident, I'm proud to see this international film festival being held in the city, and I wish it many more successful years to come.
Taiwanese film director Do Jae-ryu's international premiere, Paradise in Service, will open the festival. Hong Kong director Lee Po-chung's comedy and melodrama Gangster Payday will be the festival's closing film. Park Ji-won, Arirang News, Busan.
Tens of thousands of demonstrators are continuing to rally in Hong Kong, vowing to keep up the protest until Beijing grants the territory free democratic elections.
With more, we turn to Paul Yee at the News Center. Paul, a record number of supporters has been taken to the city streets, or have taken to the city streets today, which also happens to mark China's National Foundation Day.
That's right. Both the government and activists are bracing for a showdown on this national holiday. But these massive demonstrations appear to be staying peaceful amid the rising tensions with Beijing. And in the latest developments, student protest leaders are warning that if Hong Kong's chief executive doesn't step down by Thursday, they will begin occupying key government buildings. Our Kim In-ji has the details.
Pro-democracy demonstrations swelled in size on Wednesday with the start of National Day, which marks the founding of Communist China in 1949. Tens of thousands of people braved heavy rain and thunder overnight to continue what is being dubbed the Umbrella Revolution, an act of civil disobedience that authorities have called illegal. Hong Kong's chief executive rejected calls by student leaders to address the crowd, which he said must be immediately dismantled.
The central government won't be swayed by illegal activities. This illegal protest will not force the central government to go back on its decision on August 31st.
The Hong Kong government attended a ceremony marking the National Day amid continued protests. Demonstrators want Leung to step down as chief executive, and they want universal suffrage in Hong Kong's 2017 elections, with Beijing abandoning plans to vet candidates for the top government post. If their demands aren't met, they are considering expanding their occupation of city streets.
If a country does things that are right and its people are convinced, naturally people will come out and celebrate with it on the country's birthday. But now this is not the case. Even though it's National Day, many people are standing up and telling this government, we are not satisfied with you.
Some have voiced concerns that the protests could become a second Tiananmen Square massacre.
Beijing has a final say in everything in Hong Kong, and Beijing has a record of crackdown on peaceful demonstration with violence. So given China's record, we have no trust at all. And I think the worst thing that would happen is a second Tiananmen massacre.
The large-scale demonstrations, which began over the weekend, are the worst since China resumed control of Hong Kong from Britain in 1997. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
And turning to the Middle East, British warplanes have launched their first airstrikes against Islamic State targets in Iraq as part of U.S. efforts to wipe out the extremist group. Britain's Defense Ministry released on Tuesday a video showing aerial attacks on suspected IS weapon caches in an armed vehicle in the north of the country. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Tony Abbott has declared that Australia will also join the fight against the radical insurgents in Iraq. He said that Australian aircraft would start flying over as of Wednesday, but stressed they would initially play a support role in Allied missions. And finally, Microsoft has unveiled its new operating system called Windows 10. The early preview on Tuesday featured the return of the iconic Start button menu, marking a departure from the push for touch interfaces. At a press event in San Francisco, Microsoft executives said the goal was to unify an operating system across multiple platforms, from mobile devices to desktop PCs. The global software giant says its next flagship OS will be released next year as it tries to recapture the business market. And that wraps up our look at international stories making headlines around the world. I'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Hello and welcome. I'm Stephen Che with Wednesday's Asian Games Update. Now, we love these big sporting events because we like to see the world's best athletes shine or maybe fall on the big stage. And when someone reaches a milestone, we celebrate it all together. And etched in history is wrestler Kim Hyun-woo, who, by winning the 75-kilo Greco-Roman gold, achieved the Grand Slam of his career. And adding the Asiad gold to his London Olympic, World Championship, and Asian Championship gold medals, he's the third South Korean to complete the feat. And from grappling to kicks, it's day 2 of Taekwondo, and flying to the results, South Korea put the axe kick down on the competition. Kim So-hee surged late in her match for the under 46-kilo gold, while in the under 57-kilo division, Lee Ah-reum also had a golden finish. And on the men's side, Jo Chul-ho held on for the over 87-kilo gold. And more gold medal matches, this time over in field hockey. The women's finals wrapped up with South Korea redeeming itself with a top finish against China. Tears of joy broke out amongst the Koreans as Kim Da-rae's lone goal in the third quarter proved to be the winner. And returning to the gold after 16 years, it's South Korea's 5th overall win in Asiad hockey. And now more ladies' finals, this time in handball. South Korea returned to the finals after a hiatus in the 2010 games, facing Japan for a chance at the gold. And there, Geun-hye led the offense with 8 goals in 10 tries, helping South Korea return to the gold medal platform for the country's 6th Asian Games handball gold. Meanwhile, Kazakhstan edged out China 17-13 for the bronze medal. And finally, in rhythmic gymnastics, team-wise, Uzbekistan got the gold medal, South Korea silver, and Kazakhstan bronze. Individually, Son Yeon-jae led all 4 apparatuses for the individual lead, and she heads to the finals Thursday evening. Well, that's all I have for now. I leave you now with the medal standings and a look at Thursday's events. I'll see you later.
Hello and welcome. Most regions are enjoying partly cloudy skies, while some areas down south are getting light sporadic showers. On Thursday, 5 to 10 millimeters of precipitation is forecast to fall in some places, including Seoul. Also expect chilly and brisk morning weather through the rest of the week. This Friday is Korea's National Foundation Day, and showers are in store along the eastern coast of Gangwon-do province, but things should clear up over the weekend. Now moving on to Incheon, some unwelcome news that rain is in the forecast tomorrow, which could affect Team Korea's final football match. On to Thursday's readings. Seoul hits 22, Daegu 23. As for other places, Jeju reaches 24, Dokdo 21. That'll do it for now, and I'll see you later.
Thanks, Bo-kyung. That's Primetime News for this Wednesday. Thanks for joining us. I'm Kang Chae-ri.
I'm Sean Lim. I'll see you at midnight for Late Night Edition. Otherwise, have a great evening. Bye-bye.